Hello, and welcome to the con-j.b blog. This is my first podcast, so I don't really know what to talk about, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. My favorite podcast is Joe Rogan. Many of you probably listen to Joe Rogan. Um, he has a lot of, interesting guests. I think his last guest was Bill Maher. That's the last one I checked out. Um, but it's just something I always wanted to try. So this is my shot at it. A little backstory about myself, or a little background. I am a college student majoring in broadcasting. So this is part of my curriculum. I actually take an audio production class, and according to my professor, we are going to be doing a podcast and then a PSA and ads, things like that. So I thought I would, jump the gun and try it myself, see how much I can grow, and you guys can, hear me and watch me grow through my videos and music and podcasts, things like that. I started out in music as a music business major, picked up the guitar at the age of 16, learned to play some chords, taught myself some theory, and boom, there I was. Now I dabble with the keys, drums, all sorts of stuff. So you'll get to see my music progression, but that is no longer my major. That is now my minor. My main focus now will be videos and podcast. So I have never taken a class on, radio or podcasting, anything like that. The semester just started, so I am brand new to this. Kind of just going off of what I hear and what I see on YouTube and Apple Podcast. So hopefully you'll stick around and you'll see me get better, develop a more confident radio voice. You'll see my music get better. You'll see my videos get better. Just started, and I just got a text. Step 1, mute text on computer. That's the one thing about having an Apple computer. It's so great. I have 2 Apple computers. I have an iMac and a MacBook Pro. I use the iMac for like music, and I'm doing the podcast on my iMac, but I do video editing on my MacBook Pro. Mostly because, you're shooting something out in the world and you want to make a quick edit or something. I don't know why I chose it that way, but also I use my MacBook Pro at school. So I figured I'll be doing more video editing at school than I will music recording, since I'm now just a music minor. But anyway, so back to the video topic. I just started learning to edit videos probably about, I would say, maybe half a year ago. Maybe less. Maybe about 4 months ago, which is about half a year. But I downloaded Adobe Premiere Pro because I Googled, what video editing software do most professionals use? And Adobe pretty much owns all media creation, Apple, Adobe, and then you have a few others, but Adobe's the best, Apple's the best, at least from what I've read. And I use Logic Pro for this podcast and making my music. I feel like Logic Pro has a lot of plugins already built in, and it's very easy to navigate, very easy to learn. Everything's laid out nice and neatly. I've tried others. I have friends that use, what is it? You have FL Studio and Audacity, things like that. But I like Logic. I like all the Apple software. I like how you can send something to iTunes. You can just share it. You can airdrop it from your phone, airdrop it from your computer. It's very easy, especially if you are doing like a vlog or something on YouTube and you shoot on your iPhone. You can just airdrop to your MacBook immediately. And it, depending on the size of the clip, usually if you're doing a vlog, clips aren't very long. Sometimes you're doing different things throughout the day. So the clip might be a couple minutes long and it takes, about a minute to send to your phone. So I think that's cool. I've always loved Apple software, Apple technology, and it has the best sound. I mean, something about the iMac speakers are just fantastic. The iPhone 11 Pro speakers are fantastic. The video quality, the video resolution on my iMac is 5K. It's fantastic. And a lot of people complain about Apple being expensive, but you have to admit, for about a little less than $1,500, you're getting a 5K display and a computer built into that 5K display. That's pretty wicked. I mean, the only downside is I'm using an i5 on the iMac. I'm using an i7 on the MacBook Pro, so that's probably why I do the video editing on that, because it would slow down tremendously. Rendering videos would probably take forever on an i5, especially if you're shooting in 4K, which I shot my video in 4K, but I compressed it to 1080p just so it would upload faster. I guess I was just kind of anxious to post it. I was really excited. But so that's enough, background about myself. So this first podcast will really just be me talking about myself, but future podcasts will be, opinions and what kind of movies I watch, reviews, things like that, because I watch a ton of movies. I love movies. I would say I watch 1 to 3 movies a day. Thanks to Netflix, of course. I mean, I couldn't imagine having to go to Blockbuster for the rest of my life. I mean, I grew up loving Blockbuster, looking at the covers and things like that. But I remember towards the end, I want to say we were paying $5 to $7 for DVDs, I think. I remember it being more than it should. And of course, Redbox is, I think it's a little more than $1 now. It used to be $1, but I think they added on like $1.50, maybe $2. I don't really remember. I haven't used Redbox in forever. The only time I ever use Redbox is if the movie's not on Netflix, or if on demand you have to pay, $24.99 to own the movie. That's how I watched The Lighthouse, and what was the other one I watched? Joker. I've seen Joker 3 times. That was the only movie I saw twice in theaters. I don't know why. I loved it. I loved the way it was shot. I love Batman characters, but I'm not a big fan of superhero movies. I like the chemistry between the characters. I also like kind of how dark it is. Batman always felt more like a drama with action, because you're hearing about this traumatic event that happened to this kid, and then he becomes Batman. He's a billionaire by day and Batman by night. He's living this double life. I think it's a little more exciting than like Superman's backstory, because Superman, he grew up a geeky kid, raised by these people after he landed landed on their farm. And he's kind of a boring character. He doesn't really have any like quirks or anything like that. He falls in love with this girl that he works with, but I don't know. It's just boring. Batman was always more interesting to me because, one, he's a billionaire. He has no superpowers. So he had to go. Where did he go? I might have to Google this. But where did Batman train? Where did Batman train? So Batman trained, according to this, he started training from the age of 14 to 20 to 25. So I guess depending on which comic or graphic novel you're reading. He trained all over the world: Japan, France, Brazil. He's a master of jiu-jitsu. which is actually very cool because jiu-jitsu's, a very popular fighting style now. It's very real, and it's a lot more exciting to think that this man is using a fighting style that you can actually train in, and he's like beating up all these bad guys, where Superman's just strong. I mean, I don't even think Superman does any type of martial arts. He just like punches people and can bend steel and shoot lasers out of his eyes. But Batman actually has to work on his physique. He has to train in jiu-jitsu. And I think Christian Bale actually did a different type of martial arts. Let's see, Christian Bale, martial arts training, Batman. So he did something called KFM fight method, which, if I'm not mistaken, it almost looks familiar to Muay Thai, which is kind of like clinch fighting, close quarters combat. So, according to what I read, he did jiu-jitsu, but we saw a lot of that kind of clinch fighting in the Dark Knight series, which was fantastic, by the way. Which a lot of people say Batman's overrated. Everyone talks about him too much. But, I mean, come on. Yes, people are wearing Batman t-shirts everywhere, Batman wallets. Everyone says their favorite superhero is Batman. But there's a reason why. I mean, you have this guy who's using real fighting styles, who had to train for all of this. He doesn't have any powers. He's using technology that could be real. Someone could create these things. Of course, it's a little, too advanced for what, for us now. But, and then you have these interesting villains that have these psychological disorders, like the Joker. In the Joker movie, Joker had that disease. Forgot the name of the disease, but where you can't really control your laughter. So we see this interesting villain, first of all, who has no powers. Second of all, he's dealing with this traumatic past that he wasn't even aware of until, I can't spoil the movie. I mean, it's been out for a while now, but if you haven't seen it, like my parents and sister, then I won't spoil it for you. But he did have a traumatic childhood, and he does suffer from a psychological disorder, and probably several psychological disorders. Now, in the comics and graphic novels, we do see different Jokers. According to what I've read, there are multiple Jokers, and there are theories behind that. One of the theories that I saw on YouTube was a guy explaining how we see Joker have different past because he's making up. He has a personality disorder. He's kind of creating these upbringings and things like that. So you have this very interesting dynamic in the Batman universe. DC, I can't really speak for DC. I don't really care for any of the other characters. Justice League, the movie, was a huge flop. I know the early 2000s cartoon Justice League was actually pretty good. I remember watching that. It was pretty dark, pretty dramatic compared to the other, cartoons you'd see on TV involving superheroes. But I really like that one. Wow, I just went on a huge rant about Batman. I was starting out talking about Joker, and I didn't even talk about Joker. But I really liked Joker because just a not normal guy, but a guy with no powers, a guy who just kind of started a movement without even realizing it, And we get to see, this nervous, anxious, shy, awkward weirdo that can't control his restless leg syndrome. He's sitting down and shaking his leg half the movie. And then we see him talk to his therapist and all that. And it's very interesting how Joker started, according to this movie. I know this isn't completely accurate to like the comics and graphic novels, but he was really just defending himself on the train when he killed those 3 guys. I mean, if you had a gun and someone was beating you up and you didn't want to die, you'd probably flash it. I mean, he could have probably avoided killing them all. I probably could have just fired a warning shot or something. And I don't really know what New York's gun laws are, but I doubt they allow you to really carry any guns in New York. Are guns banned from New York? I'm not sure. Are guns banned from New York? New York City, of course. Let's see. The city of New York has its own set of laws and requires permits to own any gun or pistol. So I guess you can have a permit. Let's see. Now, I do know that if you were a police officer and you're retired, you can carry a gun anywhere in the U.S. So I know, retired cops can. Let's see. It is unlawful for any person to carry, possess, or transport a handgun in or through the state unless has a valid New York license. It says nothing about New York City. Well, I'm not going to waste my time looking this up. But anyway, you don't really hear about people carrying guns in New York. But then again, I'm not from New York or a really big city. So the point is, he was kind of reacting with emotions. He was fed up. He was just tired of just feeling the way he was. And he took it out on those guys and he started a movement because the guys, were the people that, walk all over him every day, that ignore him, that make fun of him. And he was fed up. Of course, not justifying the Joker, but we kind of see why he becomes the Joker from his side, from his story. So I love that movie. I thought the soundtrack, the score was fantastic. It's kind of eerie string instruments. I don't know what they really were, cellos, violins, but it was a really good score. Kind of built the tension. So yeah, really like that movie. Really good performance by Joaquin Phoenix. And of course, it was directed by the guy who did The Hangover, Todd Phillips. I'm going to cut it here. Kind of went on a rant. Just wanted to give you a little background on myself, talk a little bit, introduce you to the podcast. Hope you stick around, kind of watch me grow through my podcast, through my videos, and through my music. So I will catch you guys in the next podcast.